and welcome to my channel where I make dishes inspired by some of my favorite video game characters. Today's dish is inspired by Marluxia from the Kingdom Hearts series. I'm a bit obsessed with the color pink, and although I'm not very good at growing my own, I absolutely adore flowers. When I saw that a Kingdom Hearts character mixed the two together, my mind was blown. However, as a kid, I wasn't the biggest fan of Marluxia. Why? When playing through the series as a child, I was very, childish in my thoughts on characters. Are they a good person or a hero? Then I like them. Are they a bad person or a villain? Then I don't like them. Obviously, there were some exceptions, but I was very narrow in my mindsets. Because Marluxia was a villainous character, a part of Organization 13, I didn't appreciate him all that much. As time has gone on and I have matured, my views on characters have also matured, and I can appreciate Marluxia so much more. He's the main villain of Chain of Memories, which I think is a quite underrated game. I understand that the card battle system is not everyone's cup of tea, but I appreciate its originality and I appreciate a quote-unquote spin-off Kingdom Hearts game including something different. I'm someone who actually appreciates how most mainline Final Fantasy games are so different and how they're always changing and evolving, even if not all changes stick. Anyways, Marluxia is this really cool character because when I saw his character design, I was like, oh, pink and flowers? He must be really happy and upbeat. And I was so surprised to play through the game and realize that he was actually really dark, monotone, and scheming. He's extremely cool and collected throughout the game, and while he's not the deepest of villains, he was still enjoyable to watch. On top of his design and weapon being so cool, I think his boss battles are also cool. I also cannot believe that once again a quote-unquote Kingdom Hearts spin-off game lets their final boss have 3 phases, each with a unique and amazing song. I'd be fine with just Graceful Assassin, but then we get Scythe of Petals and even Lord of the Castle. Like, seriously? I was also so happy to see him return in Kingdom Hearts 3 just for the fact that I feel like he had so much to him that we didn't have enough time to explore. As mentioned, I haven't played much of the mobile game because I'm not a fan of mobile gacha games, but I am super interested by his appearance as Lauriam, and I am curious to see what else comes from him in the future. When I think of food for Marluxia, I think mostly of sweets and desserts. He's so calculated and cool that I can just see him sipping tea and enjoying an elegant and fluffy snack. Marluxia's design is heavily focused on flowers and flower petals, as they play a role in his weapon, attacks, and boss designs. Because of this, I really wanted to make something that looked like a flower or flower petals. I also not only wanted the treats to look like flowers, but taste like flowers too. He seems to be mostly associated with cherry blossoms, and luckily, cherry blossoms can be edible and are quite delicious. Mixing all of these elements together, I landed on some cherry blossom Madeleines with a beautiful chocolate coating and pink decoration to match Marluxia's grace and elegance. As you devour these faultless Madeleines, drown in the ever-blooming deliciousness. Here's what you'll need to make your own: salt pickled cherry blossoms, unsalted butter, 2 large eggs at room temperature, granulated sugar, all-purpose flour, baking powder, whole milk, white chocolate melts or vanilla chocolate melts, vegetable shortening or coconut oil, pink food dye, and pink sprinkles or edible glitter. You'll also need a Madeleine pan. I want to be transparent and say that I first bought some darker Madeleine pans and had a hard time getting my Madeleines to come out with that distinct shell look, and they always came out darker, almost like the coating got fried in the oven. I trialed the recipe 8 different times with different temperatures, greasing amounts, and other techniques, but ended up just having better luck after I bought a lighter Madeleine pan. You definitely don't need a lighter pan, but just like I had to, you might need to lower your temperature to be successful with the look of your Madeleines. Anyways, we'll begin by grabbing our salted and pickled cherry blossoms. I had never worked with these before this recipe, and I'm a bit obsessed with them. They're so cute, floral, and fragrant. I definitely want to incorporate them more into future recipes. I tried to look for them at my local Asian market, but could only find them on Amazon. So they're pickled and salted, but they're going to be a smidge too salty for us to use as is. So we're going to rinse off some of the salt and soak the blossoms for a bit. You'll grab out 40 little flowers and put them into a small bowl. You'll pour in some water, just enough to cover the blossoms, then you'll stir the flowers around a little. Pour out the water and any extra salt that is collected at the bottom of the bowl, then once again, pour in enough water to cover all of the flowers. You'll then allow the flowers to sit in the water for 30 minutes to further dilute some of the salt. If you haven't already, now's a good time to make sure that your eggs and milk are sitting out so that they can start to come to room temperature. After 30 minutes of flower soaking, you'll once again drain all of the salt and water from the flowers. Place all of the flowers on some paper towels and allow them to dry out. When I say dry out, they don't need to be bone dry or anything, just not too heavy and damp. After the flowers have dried out slightly, you can chop them all roughly and finely and then set aside for later. You can probably already see that this recipe gave me such a great excuse to pull out all of my cherry blossom dishware. Once the cherry blossoms are chopped and the eggs and milk are at room temperature, we can start to work on the Madeleine batter. Grab 8 tablespoons of unsalted butter and melt it down. Once melted, allow the butter to start cooling to room temperature. In a large mixing bowl, or in the bowl of a stand mixer, add your 2 eggs and 2/3 cup of granulated sugar. With the whisk attachment or a hand mixer, beat the sugar and egg mixture for around 3 to 5 minutes until it becomes smooth, a pale yellow, and very airy. This is known as ribbon stage. When you lift up your whisk and the mixture drips down, it should hold its shape briefly before melding back into the batter. We can then sift in our dry ingredients. We'll sift in 1 cup of all-purpose flour and 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Grab a rubber spatula and carefully fold the batter until there are no longer any visible pockets of flour. Be careful as you fold since we don't want to lose all of the air that was just built up into the batter. We can then add in the 1 tablespoon of milk and once again fold with the spatula until just combined. The next thing to go in is our melted butter. Add only half of the butter to start, folding until just combined again, then add in the rest of the butter and repeat. Remember to continue to be patient and gentle as you fold, and then once everything is just mixed, the last thing we'll add in is the chopped cherry blossoms. You'll fold in the blossoms until they are evenly distributed in the batter, and I just had to admire how beautiful this batter looks with these flowers. Now, even though the batter is all done, we can't bake it just yet. We need to chill the batter for a bit so that it can start to rest and get cold. You'll cover the bowl with plastic wrap and then place it into the fridge to chill for at least an hour. When the batter is almost done chilling, you can start preheating your oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. If you have dark Madeleine pans, you might need to lower this to 350 or even 325 degrees instead. Speaking of Madeleine pans, you'll grab your Madeleine pans and some more melted butter and flour. You'll need about 2 more tablespoons of unsalted butter, so after melting this, brush the molds lightly with the butter. You want to cover all surfaces of the molds, but make sure that the butter is not too thick or pooling at the bottom of the molds. You'll then dust a thin layer of flour onto all surfaces of the molds. Lightly buttering and flouring the molds will help the Madeleines unstick from the pan later, and honestly, I found that the flour, when dusted lightly, can also help create some more defined lines on your Madeleines once they're cooked. With the molds ready for our Madeleines, we'll grab a 1 tablespoon measuring spoon as well as a rubber spatula. Scoop out about 1 tablespoon of the batter and then transfer the batter into each mold, using the rubber spatula to gently scoop out all batter from the spoon. Once the batter is in the molds, there's no need to flatten or level out the batter as it'll spread out into the right shape as it bakes. You can then slide the Madeleine pan into the oven to bake for around 11 to 13 minutes until the edges turn slightly golden and the center of the Madeleine springs back to the touch. At this point, you can remove them from the oven and let them cool for around 3 minutes within their pan. After 3 minutes, gently remove the Madeleines and place them on a cooling rack to fully cool. Because of the butter and flour, especially if you have a non-stick pan, the Madeleines should slide out pretty easily. Once the Madeleines are cooling, you can start making the decorative coating for the Madeleines. Grab a medium metal heat-safe bowl and add in 1½ cups of baking chocolate as well as 1 tablespoon of vegetable shortening or coconut oil. Add water into a small saucepan so that it's about 1 inch high, then start heating the pan on high until it's boiling. Once the water reaches a boil, you can lower the temperature to medium-low, and this should reduce the boil down to a simmer. As the water simmers, we'll add the metal bowl of chocolate to the top of the pan. Just make sure that the metal bowl fits on top without the bottom touching the water inside. We'll allow the chocolate to heat and start to melt, all while occasionally stirring with a rubber spatula to make sure that the chocolate doesn't burn. Keep heating and stirring occasionally until the mixture is fully melted and smooth, then remove the bowl from the heat. Drop in a few drops of pink food dye to your desired color and stir until you're happy with the color and the chocolate is nice and smooth. Once the chocolate is ready and the Madeleines are cool, we can start to coat the Madeleines. The chocolate should still be somewhat warm for the coating process, but the Madeleines should be at room temperature. One at a time, dip your Madeleines into the coating chocolate in a style of your choice. You can dip on a slant like me, dip in half vertically, dip in half horizontally, or dip on just the scalloped side. There are so many fun ways to decorate, so have fun. After dipping, place back onto the cooling rack. Now if you're gonna decorate with sprinkles, sprinkle them on top here while the chocolate is not yet set. That way the sprinkles can embed themselves into the chocolate before it hardens. If you're gonna decorate with edible glitter, wait for the chocolate to fully set before you brush on. Once the Madeleines are as beautiful as Marluxia, you're all ready to dig in. I will admit there is some extra satisfaction in tasting these for me since I had to make them so many times, but maybe that really means something that I still love them after taste testing so many batches. The appearance is so fun and beautiful, just like little edible flower petals. I love how fluffy, airy, and buttery each Madeleine is. Although the cakey batter is wonderfully sweet, you get the little surprise pockets of slightly salty cherry blossoms throughout that always keeps you on your toes. It's got a little hint of floral flavor that I love, and the thin layer of chocolate on top adds a smooth and creamy element that is very welcomed. There's just no way that Marluxia would yell, "No good," after taking a bite. Just like the petals that drift around him during his in-game appearances and boss battles, he'd likely have dreams of these Madeleines floating around him in his sleep. Marluxia gives me the feeling that he's naturally very skilled in the kitchen, especially with baked goods, and he'd be amazing at baking without even trying. I also feel like he'd be really particular about all of his ingredients and decorations, and everything would need to be just right. He's the kind that if he didn't like something he made or another nobody made, he wouldn't sugarcoat it, and he wouldn't be afraid to express it, even if it hurt their feelings. On his time off from organization missions, he'd love to lose himself in some challenging bakes in the kitchen and would get so wrapped up in his work that he wouldn't even notice when someone stepped into the kitchen. And even if he did notice them, he'd just ignore them. There would be so many skilled bakes he would love to make, but he would always come back to these relatively simple Madeleines. Since they don't take too much work to make, he'd love to whip up a batch alongside some refreshing herbal tea. He'd head out to a tranquil garden, and among the flowers he'd enjoy his snack, his tea, a romance novel, and the peace and quiet. He'd let nothing disrupt his tranquil afternoon, and he wouldn't be afraid to lose himself in the atmosphere and lose track of time as well. After all, in a place like this, to find is to lose, and to lose is to find. The recipe card is in the video description if you'd like a more quick and concise version to give it a try. Like if you want a bite, subscribe for more geeky treats, and comment what foods Marluxia reminds you of. Thanks for following along.